Thank you so much for attending my presentation about why flying type moves are terrible for no reason. For most types in the game, they get a few fairly distributed, powerful moves for both the physical and special side. This makes sense. You don't want your Pokemon to be unable to use strong moves of their stab types, and generally, Game Freak has done a good job with this. A good example is the Grass type. Seed Bomb, Horn Leech, Leaf Blade, Wood Hammer, Leaf Storm, and Energy Ball are all pretty common. This lets all the grass types, use grass moves. However, there's one type where this actually doesn't really happen: flying. There's three problems that plague flying type moves: power, reliability, and distribution, and I'm not kidding when I say that every single flying type move has one of these issues. Let's start with the first one, which is also the most simple. Some of them just don't deal enough damage. This is where you see moves like Peck, Gust, Pluck, Aerial Ace, and Wing Attack fall. Sure, they're 100% accurate flying moves with good distribution, but they don't actually pose a large threat to anything that isn't both frail and weak. You do see them run sometimes, especially on mons like Dragonite, who can leverage his massive attacking stat to make it work, but it's rare and is often subbed out for stronger coverage or support. When these moves do actually have decent base power, they're often very unreliable. Hurricane is a perfect example of this. 110 base power with the chance to confuse is wonderful, but it has a pitiful 70 accuracy. This move is basically Focus Blast, and if you've ever used a Pokemon with Focus Blast, you'd know how bad that is. When Hurricane hits, it's devastating, but getting it to actually hit consistently is a big hurdle. Sure, you could set up the rain to make it guaranteed, but that's much easier said than done. Pelipper's Hurricane is by far the most reliable as it sets the weather up for itself, but other Pokemon don't have the luxury. Many do run this move out of necessity though, Zapdos and Tornadus being great examples. The other moves are much better. Acrobatics also hits 110 base power and is perfectly accurate, but you can't have an item. If you don't, it's 55 base power. That's a trade-off that many Pokemon just can't take. Bounce, Fly, and Sky Attack deal good damage but are two-turn moves, making them extremely predictable. Beak Blast has lowered priority, meaning you can't run it on a fast attacker. Terra Blast Flying is wonderful, but requires you use your Terra, a huge sacrifice just to click an 80 base power move. Dual Wing Beat is also 80 base power, but 90% accuracy is really rough for a move that weak, and the two-hit nature is often worse. Taking two Rocky Helmet hits or having two chances to get Flame Body burn isn't fun. Finally, distribution. There are several flying moves that are actually both powerful and don't make you want to rip your hair out, but unfortunately are restricted to just a few mons. Aeroblast is a 100 base power, 95% accurate move, but is only on Lugia. Dragon Ascent is flying type close combat, but is only on Rayquaza. Duropeck is an 80 base power, 100% accurate move, sounds wonderful, but is extremely limited. Skarmory is the only actually strong Pokemon that gets real use out of it, as everything else has very low usage or is in a very low tier. With all of these problems in mind, the two best flying moves are probably Air Slash and Brave Bird, both of which have their issues. Air Slash is a somewhat meager 75 base power and has less than perfect accuracy, but with a flinch chance it can bail you out big time. Not bad, but is lacking. Brave Bird is 120 base power and 100% accurate, but it has recoil, making it difficult to use on bulky attackers as you will eventually knock yourself out. Once again, not bad, but not what you want to see as your type's main option. And there are some important flying types that just don't get the moves they need to succeed. Gyarados doesn't have Brave Bird, meaning it can't click a good flying move outside of Terra Blast. Landorus T and Dragonite are in the same boat. Moltres doesn't get enough value out of Air Slash due to its lower power and has to click Hurricane for its flying stab. Talonflame would love to just spam priority flying moves with Gale Wings, but has to choose between immediately losing that benefit because of Brave Bird's recoil or not having an item to give Acrobatics its strength. Similarly, Flamigo's Brave Bird feels terrible to click because it'll break its own focus hash, forcing it to rely on the notoriously unreliable Dual Wing Beat. Flying types are consistently screwed because they just don't have the options that other types have. In conclusion, the flying type has very few actually good attacking moves, both on the physical and special side. This unfortunately often means that some of the strongest flying types aren't able to actually threaten consistent flying type damage. I hope these moves get a little bit better, maybe a Drill Peck distribution buff or something. Thank you so much for watching.